Hi, this video is about how to find the slope of an intermediate point on a curve. We are using pivot interactives. This is described by Mr. Richard Wright. Enjoy.
Okay, so I was just going to show you another way of looking at what you're doing here, right? So if we look at this, if this is a position clock reading graph for an object, we're observing that an object is slowing down uniformly. So the velocity is changing, and if we know that the velocity is the slope of this graph, it becomes more difficult because how do you find the slope of a curve? And so the technique that you're doing in this activity in particular, you've done a previous activity as well, is you're looking at 2 points immediately. Just look maybe over. Look there. So we look at is a point just before the clock reading you're concerned with, and just after that, and we are imagining that it was a constant velocity during that time interval. We find the slope of that. The interesting thing that falls out of the mathematics of that is that that is the same slope as, so the slope of this purple line is the same as the slope of this green line, where this green line, models what the slope of this curve is at this instantaneous point. So that's what you're doing, right? What that looks like in the context of pivot, right, is, so let's look at our positions versus clock reading. What that looks like within pivot is you're only looking at, let's do 6, 7, 8. Between clock readings 3.6 and 4, we see the position has changed. Just by looking at the data here, we see that it's not changing by the same amount each clock reading, or interval rather. And then looking down here at the graph, right, we see a little bit of slope here. We see a much steeper slope in this second portion. So what we want to do is we want to try and model what is happening at this midpoint of this little interval here. So what's happening at 3.8 seconds? And the way we do that is we take these 3 data points and we pretend it's a line, and we find the slope of that line. What that tells us is that between 3.6 and 4, the slope being negative 0.25 tells us what the actual slope of the curve would be at this midpoint of 3.8, and so that would be negative 0.25.
I hope your questions have been answered about how to find the slope on a curve of a position clock reading graph. Please continue to ask questions. Thanks.